there are reasons sometimes that we can't help it. There's single parents. And there's also some times where there's divorce, and it's caused someone to be a single parent. And I'd like to, in this part of the teaching, I advise you to be careful how you're talking. Well, if she'd have done this, or if he'd have done that, or if this would have happened, that would have happened, wouldn't happen. I'll tell you something, folks. You weren't there to tell them how to do it. So let's not get too critical. The thing of it is, there's some single parent that has to take care of things. And the woman we just studied about a while ago was a woman that she went to the man of God and said, I got a problem. Now, her husband had died. Now, let's say that let's say that you were responsible for the divorce. You're the one that caused the problem and caused your husband to leave, or your wife, or whatever the case may be. Here's where you have to learn to manage. Get a hold of yourself, cry out to God and say, Lord, okay, I messed up. Now I've got a problem. How am I going to have income? What am I supposed to do? Because He has the answer. And instead of you getting and letting everybody give their opinion, it causes horrible troubles when everybody's got their opinion. Let me tell you this. It's good to get some good sound advice what to do. But one person will tell you need to go to work, and another says you need to stay at home, and another says this, and another says that. And just hold it a little bit. If I did everything that everybody suggested, there's no way you can do all that. It's not a solution for you to give your unmanaged advice. Furthermore, if you have a problem, go to your church leaders is the first place, not to a secular person. Go to a spiritual leader and say, all right, I've got a problem. We don't have an income enough here. I have to take care of these. And he may say you need to manage different. Really. He may say you have to do a little different management than what you've been doing. You have to stop spending so much money. And then don't get offended. After all, you'll be back in the same old shape you was before. Now, let's get into this kitchen management business. Proper preparation management. I've got there eggs and bacon not prepared in time or in order. The reason I got that there is I'm going to tell you a story. My wife and I used to go to a home quite a distance from here, and I preached at that place. And so that fellow would get up in the morning. Him and his wife both did the cooking. But generally speaking, he's the one that pretty well got the breakfast. And he'd get up in the morning, and he'd go out to the kitchen, and he'd fry some eggs. And then he'd put them on the table. And then he'd stand there and talk a while. And then after a while, he'd go get some bacon, and he'd fry the bacon. And then he'd stand there and talk a while. And then after a while, he'd make some toast. And by the time you ate them cold eggs, they're nick's nuts. You know, the thing of it is, it's not good. It's not good. I was in a home one time that the eggs were so bad that I literally laughed. I just couldn't help myself. And I said that was the worst mess of eggs I had ever eaten. They were scorched. They were stinking. They were cold. And they were really tough. And I told her, I don't know how you could make eggs that ridiculous. And then hand it to the visitors. And let me show you something about kitchen management. My wife and I was at the preacher's house one time, and she made some eggs. And they did kind of get broken up. They weren't that bad, but they weren't as nice as he wanted. And he handed me the eggs and said, here, help yourself. I'm going to make me some eggs that look good. Not only that, but he didn't like the meat she had for breakfast, so he goes back and gets him some more meat, a different kind of meat. And I looked at that, looked pretty good. I had all this other stuff to eat. And I thought, you know, that's not managing things very good. I mean, you know, really. I'm talking about kitchen management. And listen, what you need to do, I'm a cook enough to know this. Get your stuff on the stove and keep management. Hold your management. You may have to stir the beans. You have to turn over this that you're fried or whatever, and you can do it. And at my home, we all had to have chores to do. And in the midst of all my brothers and sisters, I had to do things too. And we ate a lot of popcorn. We just were really popcorn fans, so we had popcorn a lot of times. And it finally got to be that everybody burned the popcorn but me. And I told them the reason they burned the popcorn is because we're in a lonely kitchen. Everybody else is in there laughing and having a good time. And you want to go in there and see what they're doing and so forth. And by the time you get back, your popcorn's already burnt. So I learned that you have to stay there. And I told them, you stay there and shake that popcorn, which we had kettles that long. Them old cook stoves years ago, big old long, whatever they call them things. We shake them back and forth and put a whole bunch of butter and stuff in them things. And it made popcorn. And so they turned it over to me to make the popcorn. So I always made the popcorn. And I told them, I said, the problem is you're trying to do something in the kitchen, you're in there. It was management. The only reason mine didn't burn is because I had to learn to discipline myself when something was funny and everybody going ha ha ha, and I want to go in and find out what was ha ha about. But no, that management meant that I needed to stay there in the kitchen and finish that popcorn. Then I'll join the family with their ha ha. And furthermore, I could even ask them what was so funny. So what you need to do is, another thing, you go to have a picnic or anything, and you can get to the place where you're all frustrated and you're not getting things done right. Well, you got this done, but you don't have that done, and you don't have this ready, and you don't have that ready, and you don't have this done, and you don't have that done. And, you know, where if you learned how to manage, you can have everything ready at the same time. Now, we're getting ready to have our family tomorrow. Somebody's got to manage those children, everybody coming in. We got to manage. Or we're not going to have lunch at the right time. And so I say, watch the clock. Operate that thing. If we are not prepared to manage the kitchen properly, it can become a disaster. Let me show you something. I was in a home one time, and I'm not there to be critical. I'm there to observe what's going on because I got to teach you stuff. The mother is washing the dishes and have a little 2-year-old sitting beside the dish where the dishes are being dried and so forth. And the baby's playing with the dishes that's washed. Playing with them. Somebody's not managing correctly. Come on, what's the baby doing up there anyway? Get the baby out of there. Now you say, well, now you're being critical. I am not. This is human beings eating this stuff. You got to eat off of that. Children raiding the kitchen. Come in and grab their hands and stuff and grab this and grab that while we're setting the table. And food improperly prepared. You know, one of the things that has bothered me for years, you go buy a pizza, and it's got meat on it, it needs to be refrigerated. The thing sits there all night, and then they want to feed it to you for breakfast. Don't feed it to me. I don't eat poison food. That's not proper preparation. The Lord said to me one time, He said, there's more people get sick off of mishandled food than about anything else. And even if it isn't the exact cause, it traces back to that. Food improperly handled. You stack your food up there and don't have it properly cared for. I tell you, you go check with the county agent sometime and find out. They're supposed to know what they're doing. Find out what all this poison's about. People getting sick. You go in a restaurant, they don't have food handled right. It's sitting there. not refrigerated. We went into a restaurant in one of the off states one time. They had hot dogs piled on the back of the stove, a foot and a half high. Hot dogs. And no refrigeration. All day long, them hot dogs will be there. All day long as they cook them. And if they don't eat them all that day, well, they'll put them in the refrigerator and make you sick the next day. And then we wonder why we had a stomach disorder or something's going wrong. And folks, you can take all the medication you want to take. If you don't learn to handle food, you know, somebody ran a check one time and said that you catch a fish and you clean that thing. If that thing is not placed in ice immediately, it can get poisoned. And a friend of mine, which is a fishing guide, told me one time, he said, I will never take a fish out of the water without that thing going right into the ice immediately. You get poisoned one time with that and you'll know better. Because fish can get extremely poisoned. Another thing is using the same dish towel over and over and over and over again. You know that thing picks up germs. Recently, on the radio, a program came on the radio, and this person said, we went into homes spontaneously, checked their dish, the things they wash dishes with, and clear off their table with, and also checked their cutting boards and so forth. And the last thing we checked was the commodes. And there was more germs on the stuff in the kitchen than on the commode. And he said the worst thing we ever tested was tablecloths. You just keep using the same tablecloth over and over again. See, the thing of it is, you say, well, the water's on it. No, everything else on it too. See, here's the thing that the Lord gave me one time. You handle raw meat, and then you pick over, and you're going to put salt on the meat you just handled. Now that salt shaker has poison on it. It's going to get poisoned. So all the way you go, you have to be careful. The Lord said America's under a judgment of curse. And you're going to have to be more careful than ever before. And another thing while I'm graving about salt shakers is I have been in more homes where children have salt shakers in their mouth and their tongue all over the salt shaker thing, and slobber's running down in it, and then set it there for me to shake on my eggs. Folks, I'm not trying to be critical, but I have to live through all this stuff. At my home, I can manage it, but I can't manage somebody else's home. And I have definitely sat in places where, at least 2 different places where I was invited to eat, where the mother dried a diaper, a messy diaper, and never washed her hands, and one baked bread after that without washing. Gets her hand in there and kneads the dough. And another got bread out of the pack without washing. I have to eat that junk. And listen, sanctified or no sanctified, I don't want sanctified dung in my meal. Now, I'm trying to say to you now, if this managing business, if you're not careful, one of these days you're going to get desperately sick. Is the food you make for your family fit to eat? That's a question under food management. Is it even fit to eat? Has it been stored correctly? Has it been fixed correctly? You think in general you can eat meat that's not fully cooked. Most people, not most, maybe I'd better say it differently. A lot of people eat what they call rare or medium rare steaks. You can get away with that, but if that thing has been laying out and gets poison in it, you don't get away with it. And then you wonder why you're sick. Well, I must have caught the flu that's going around. You might have caught something else that's going around too. You see, meats that are not taken care of can produce harmful bacteria. And God, I sanctify. You are not going to sanctify improperly handled food, because God of heaven don't go along with that. Hey, are y'all still here?
Amen. That's right.
Now, that's food management, under-eating and overeating and dieting. What are you going to do when you eat too much or eat too little? See, there's people that used to have a girl go to school, church here, and she wouldn't eat because she's afraid she'd go get fat and nearly starve. They had to call me to come pray for her so that she'd eat. She's afraid she's going to get fat. And she was in terrible shape. And we have been encouraged from several different sources, including the government, to have some food and water stored in case of problems. It's just good management practice to have some extra stuff on hand. Earthquakes can happen. They don't expect them to happen, but they do. And what are you going to do when it happens? We need to provide for ourselves as well as our family, but not to fear, because you store up stuff out of fear and you might as well forget it. You store it up because of good management practices, not fear. Food that is stored out of fear can become contaminated and cursed. It is important to remember once again, if any man provide not for his own, especially those of his own household, is denied the faith and worse than an infidel. That's what the book here is saying. Listen, another thing I'd like to mention to you, there's people over the years that bought a whole lot of food and stored it up, and that stuff goes out of date. And then you start eating it, and then everybody's sick, and you can't understand why. There's just certain things that can't last forever. And you need to get some wisdom on that kind of thing. Man, I didn't mean to get quite this mean, but anyway, let's talk about restaurant eating management. All right, you go to a restaurant, and you're loud and noisy and disturbing, and children violating the buffet restrictions and so forth. You watch a child go down there, and he gets potatoes in the gravy, and he gets this, and he's got in that, and he takes stuff off his plate and puts it back because he didn't want it all. And there's not very good management. Another thing the Lord said to me, this is not what man said to me, this is what the Lord said to me. One of your greatest problems is going to be people who have mishandled their own hands, don't wash right, and you're in a buffet and you pick up a spoon that everybody else has had, everybody's got a disease or a problem is transmitting that, you put it on your hands, then you put your hands into the food you're going to eat and eat that stuff. It's going to make a lot of people sick because people are not going. One of the things he said will happen, people will get to the place where they will not wash and clean up because the filth of the world is coming on us. There's going to be so much filth and wickedness and perversion that people's not even going to clean their hands, and even if they do, let me show you something. All right, I'm working at a restaurant, let's say, and I'm out here where I have to handle the food. All right, so my responsibility is when I go to the restroom that I have to wash good. I know at one restaurant we went into, it said, if you haven't washed, as long as it takes for you to sing Old MacDonald Had a Farm, you aren't clean. That's what they had in the sign. Now, I'll tell you what, it takes a little while unless you're singing mighty fast. It takes a little while to sing that. But, you know, here's the thing. You go in, you wash clean. Now, you come and hit that doorknob. Now there's 1,000 people across that doorknob that never cleaned up. Now your hand that you just cleaned is filthy dirty. So the first thing you touch is polluted. You know what I do? I'm going to tell you what I do. I go in the restroom, it's got a knob on it. I always get a paper towel and unlock the door, or open the door, and then throw the towel in that thing. Take my foot and hold it. I'm not going to hold the door open. You listen, I've got to eat that stuff. You say, well, aren't you getting critical? I tell you what, I don't want to be sick. I got jobs to do. I can't be laying around with some kind of a unksy-dunksy going on. We need to provide for ourselves as well as our family, and don't forget that. But at the same time, when you're at that restaurant, respect that restaurant. You know how we set some laws when we went to the restaurant, all of us went to the restaurant to eat. Well, I mean, with a crowd like we came in there, I mean, it was quite a crowd. But it's a big place that can handle us. But you know, when they say you're the most disciplined and well-managed people we've ever seen, what does that mean? Folks, it means somebody's catching on to what I'm teaching you. Somebody's catching on to it. Another thing is you can get into a restaurant and spend a horrible lot of time. We've seen that happen. One time, I really needed to go. I needed to go rest because we got something that evening. I had to preach or something, and we got to rest. I mean, I got to go. So I go into this restaurant. Well, I thought we was just go in there. But here come a whole bunch of other people, and they're going to help us. Brother Kevin knows the circumstance I'm talking about. And I need to go. But here comes another family, and then here comes another family, and here comes somebody else, and then here comes somebody else, and here comes somebody else. And we're waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting for everybody to get seated. And you sat here and you sat here. Well, let's set these chairs. Let's do this. And Brother Kevin said, Brother Rhodes is going to have to go. Let's start eating something. You know, and you see, we spent at least 15 minutes trying to get the place to sit. And I didn't want to get up and go out and get my food and say, well, you know, it's not, folks, that I'm hungry. I have a managed life. I want to manage right. Let's, you know, I've told you on the other series, when they said, Brother and Sister Rhodes, would you go back there and eat first? You know, because of respect, we go back there and somebody wants to talk to us. No, don't talk to me now. We went to go eat. It's not that I'm that hungry. It's that I've got to clear the way for somebody else to follow me. It's a part of management, folks. And when you take your family out for special treats, how much do you spend? How much do you do this? You know, some people can afford it, others cannot. But the thing of it is, folks, at least when let me go a little deeper. I don't want to shallow this on. I took a family years ago out to eat. A very undisciplined, unmanaged family. We go to this place to eat, and the food's expensive. And one of the children said, I want this, and I want this, and I want this. And the mama said, you can't eat all that. I want it, I want that. So they bought all this stuff. They never touched it. They had to junk it. You know who paid for it? Folks, listen. You say, well, aren't you kind of critical? You might interpret it to be that, but you wait till we get to the other side and see what all the Lord may say to you. Whether we eat or drink or whatsoever we do all to the glory of God. And I think it's giving tips is another thing. Well, tipping. I tell you, there's somebody sitting in here right now took us out to eat one time. And I mean, we had a waitress that I don't know, she really had a bad day or something. I mean, she was a mess. And I wasn't in charge, but we needed drink. We're not getting drinks. We're paid for a meal. We're not getting drinks. We're not getting this. We're not getting that. And just, it's terrible. So she come past, and I just said to her, I said, when you get a chance, I said, just if you could, just get us a drink. Whoa, she got mad at me. Said, I can't feed everybody right now. Everybody, I can't do everything. Well, I didn't say you could, you know. But listen, she got fired too. The person in charge walked up and handed her a tip that was out of this world. And I mean, that woman's attitude changed right now. Now she started apologizing. No, don't apologize. We're trying to help you. It wasn't mine. It was somebody else. Somebody else gave this big tip to help her to know that we're not mad at her. But you see, the thing of it is, folks, you need to tip those people. I think it's unreasonable to give 15% tips. I think that's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, they're supposed to be hiring you, not me. I have to pay them for making my meal. Well, anyway, whatever the case may be, so it's customary that you tip. So we tip. I don't ever tip under 10%. I mean the 15. That's pretty customary. 15 used to be 10. I wonder if the Lord ever raised his tithing. Now let's talk about toys. I mean, here is one of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen in my life, is this toy business. I mean, toys. How many toys do you buy? And what do you do with all the toys? And toys and toys and more toys. And children just want this and they want that and they want this and they want that. I'll tell you what, when I grew up, my mom and dad couldn't buy us all toys. We had wood blocks that we made tractors out of and stuff. We played with old cardboard boxes and stuff. That was back in the days when they, before they had intellect and abilities like they do today, in quotes. We made out okay. We had a ball and a bat and a few things. But I tell you what, my parents didn't go out and just spend money on toys. And what this generation's doing is spending money on toys they don't have. And another thing I'd like to say is, it's not very often this don't happen. But people come to our house with their family. And almost without exception, I end up cleaning up the toys after they leave. Parents, that's your responsibility to gather them things up. You see to it to get put back in place. I got enough to do without that. And, I mean, there's toys. I have to mow sometimes. I got to pick this up. I got to pick that up. Come, somebody let this lay here. Somebody let that lay here. And I got to move all that stuff. And I'm not that excited about crawling off and on a mower. You see, it's all a part of management, folks. I mean, that child, once that child learns to gather those toys up, put them away. And another thing, that certain things in the house are not toys. The other day I was in a store, Esther and I was coming around the bend there, and here's a little girl. And she's just tearing stuff off and getting this and tearing this off and doing that. And after a while, here come a mother and said, "Hey, so-and-so, hey. And, "Oh, no, you're not supposed to be playing with that." Yeah, I know. Why didn't that mother know where that child was at? Folks, listen, I'm not trying to be critical, but I'm telling you, American people are out of control. And nobody dared say amen. They're out of control. They really are. Children breaking what somebody else, they're breaking it and then letting it go at that. Well, I'm sorry. No, there's more than sorry. You break somebody's toy, you replace it. You break their chair, you replace it or fix it. These demonic toys that some of these parents are buying for their children, and then you're going to wonder why your children turned out bad. Because you bought them demonic toys. Old gruesome looking devils and stuff. And people don't know any better. And these guns and knives, the Lord said to me, they're intended to make you a killer. They're not to make you an army soldier. They're not even intended for that. The pistols are murder. That's what you're supposed to think about, is a fella cowboy killing somebody or a robbery of some kind. And you get that child with that knife, and all of a sudden he's got a urge to try to kill you, and shooting and so forth like this. And if you don't be careful, one of these days your children's going to turn into a real problem. The Lord said there's children's got those knives that get a demon, and those pistols and those toy pistols are prayed over to destroy children. That's all I'm going to say about that now. What about gifts you receive from others? You get a gift for your children. Your children's already got toys, but you get some more gifts. And they get this, and they get this, and they get this, and they get this. Some of those toys are not fit for your children to play with. They're absolutely ridiculous toys. But the grandparents may want to give them to you because they don't understand. We're living in a generation where it's just not the way it used to be. You'll have to check those things and manage them, whether they're good or bad. And another thing is, what effect does these books and toys and videos have on your child? All right, you're going to put this funny video in. You know, I remember a preacher was telling me how great a certain video was. And, oh my, when I heard the thing, my opinion and his was totally different. It's just awful. Let me get a little more nosy. This puppet thing, if we have to lead children to the Lord with a puppet, we got a real sick world. If a child can't understand who Jesus Christ is without some old long-nosed monkey trying to tell you how to get it, or some goose, I mean, the idea of an old goose up here telling you Jesus loves her. And what's wrong with speaking English language to them? Maybe someday we'll get back to America. I don't know where America went to. When I was a boy, we had America. Today, I don't know what we got. I'd like to go visit America sometime. You don't know where you can find any Americans? I hope they're right in here. It's about the only place I can find Americans. You'll have to manage that child who is greedy and quarrelsome, has wrong attitudes, and unwilling to share. I mean, give me that. That's what I'm telling you, that kind of thing. Hold it. You know, the managing father or mother says, "Wait, little, you can't do that." Yeah, that's a good time to pick that paddle up and let him have it. Here comes some discipline along with those toys and willingness. If you don't kill his greed, one day he's going to take over. And child getting into this drawer and into that drawer and taking this out and taking that. I was at a place, I told you all this before, at a place where the little children got all these, like back there we have these knives and forks and spoons that's plastic in a box. Well, these children got those things and took and scattered them out on the floor and were playing with them. And I thought, you would certainly think that somebody would realize this is not right. Well, finally, one parent come by and said, you know, we ought to have the children playing with them toys. So playing with these things. They scooped them up and put them back in and put them back on the shelf. We sanctify. Listen, folks, you don't sanctify dirt. God is not going to allow you to sanctify something that's not fit to eat. Why don't you sanctify a buzzard? Try it one time. Get yourself a buzzard and cook him up. So I'm going to sanctify him. You'll find out. Now let's talk about playtime management. Do you know where your children are when they're playing? You know what they're doing? Are you sure you know what your children's doing when they're playtime? How are your children doing at school? Do you really know? Do you know at gymnasium time, what are they doing? You know, if you don't manage playtime, it's going to manage you. You have to decide how long that child can play and what he can do. You're going to have to decide that. There's some times when it's good just to tell a child, look, we're going to put the toys up, or we're going to stop that game or something, and I want you to mow the lawn. It's a good time to show some exercise, some authority. They don't want to. But once you understand that you're obligated and responsible as a father not to provoke those children to wrath, but to bring them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord, there comes a time when you're going to have to stop that game playing thing and say, look, it's time to do something else. I remember, it's been some years ago now, when children used to work in the garden. That was in my time too. I mean, my mother didn't say, would y'all mind weeding the garden? Would I mind? Of course I mind. My parents never asked me permission to tell me what to do. They just said, all right, go out and hoe the garden. But now we got this, this thing goes like this. You mind going to do that? I mean, is it all right if I tell you not to do that? Yeah. Then we wonder why the children's run over their parents. Listen, I'll get tamer when I get past this child training business. Because, I mean, that provokes me to no end. I mean, I've seen children come into our home, crawl up on the table. Just crawl up on the table. And they got the salt shaker, they got the pepper shaker, and they got the napkins, and they got this, and they got that. Oh, don't get on the table, don't get on the table. Now there's something else. And now they're turning this on. And now they're in this, and now they're opening this drawer. I tell you what, you didn't do that at my house. Not when I was chief butler. Our children was never allowed to do that. We could set a thing of candy on the table and tell the children, don't you touch that without permission. They wouldn't touch that. We left it sit there for a purpose. To teach them, yield not to temptation, for yielding is sin. Don't you touch that candy without permission. And I tell you, the children knew to do that. You say, well, isn't that kind of mean? No, it isn't mean. I'll tell you what, you can spend all your life training that child and let them run out with young people, and those young people will put devilment in them right away, and you lost everything you had. The rod of reproof giveth wisdom, but a child left to himself will bring his mother to shame. His daddy too, as far as that's concerned. You know what? That child will get some wisdom once he feels that rod a couple times. Patty cake won't do it. It is not a patty cake. It is a painful experience to receive a rod of correction. It's something you don't want to do the second time. And if that child is given a bang, 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 and that child goes, you're lost. You lost the game. And if that child gets away with something one time, he's got you. You can't let him get away with it. Him or her, either one. You cannot let him get away with it. You make sure that you keep in management to that thing, that you're managing that child. He's not able to manage himself yet. When that child gets a whipping to the extent, or a beating with a rod, as the Bible tells it, he is going to hurt, and he's not going to want it the second time. And when a child goes, yeah, when you take him out the door, you haven't disciplined him right. And if a child needs to say, if you need to say 1, 2, 3, you done listen, you done lost. Chasten thy son while there is hope, and let thy soul spare for his crying. Sure, he's going to cry. He better. And you'll watch a child, you give them a spanking, and they just go like this. Somewhere you lost it. You have a rebellion in that child, and one of the things that happen is going around teaching the child. Listen, the Bible doesn't say thou shalt teach thy child. That'll make a child mad. That child will rebel. Take that child out there and give a rod of correction. Withhold not correction from thy child. For if thou shalt beat him with a rod, he shall not die. Thou shalt beat him with a rod, and shall deliver his soul from hell. Folks, he's saying you're going to keep yourself from a lot of problems. If that child is disciplined well, you have to manage him until he's able to manage himself. I've already said this, and you know, I told the Lord, I said, I hate to talk about child training anymore because I don't see much fruit of what I've ever said. I've seen very little fruit in the teaching I've done on child training. Very little. And that's not encouraging to me. I told the Lord, I don't want to teach this. If I got to teach this all over again, I hadn't done any good the 2 times I taught it. Why would it do any good the 3rd time? He said, you're obligated to do it. You do it. You teach them what I told you. It's Bible. If you don't... If you think, well, that's Brother Rhodes' opinion, then forget it. Go your way. A wise son maketh a glad father, but a foolish son is heaviness to his mother. And I'll tell you what, folks, you can train that child and let them run around with those wolves for a little bit, and you got a problem. When Yummy was growing up, they said, you're going to ruin her. She has to get out there. She has to get in the world. She has to do this. I said, no, she doesn't. The mother told me one day, she said, I don't know what to do with my kids. They're just crazy. She said, would you pray for them? All my girls has had a baby so far, every one of them. And I said, where's your 12-year-old daughter right now? She said, I don't know, a bunch of boys come and picked her up here a while ago. I don't know where she's at. Just pray for her. She don't get pregnant. I'm not praying no such thing. No. I'm not praying that kind of a prayer. A mother came to me one time. She said, pray for my daughter. She's been running around boys a lot. And I said, what do you want me to pray for? She said, well, I don't know if I ought to tell you. I said, well, I'm not going to pray for her then because I know what it is. You don't want her pregnant. She said, well, that's right. I said, I'll tell you how to avoid that. Keep her away from the boys. See this silly thing? And listen, the reason I'm telling you this, folks, in the tune I am, I've already taught this stuff, never did much good. Now that's negative. I still get in homes where children are rising over the thing. I mean, they're Lord over everything. One time a father had me there, and of course he wants to talk to me and son, and we're out barbecuing some stuff, and this little boy comes along and he gets something, and he goes over and gets it off the grill and takes off with it. And the dad runs and gets him, puts it back on the grill. After a while, he comes back, gets the thing off the grill again, takes off with it. Here comes the dad running, grabs him. I said, no, just leave it on there. And after a while, the little boy grabs it off the grill again, so he sets him on his lap. That's more than I would have done. I'd have took that child whether anybody's around or not. And I said, do you understand? I said, don't you touch that thing. And do you know what that means? Do you understand me? Man, he wants to be nice to his son. Yeah, you're giving him to hell. That's what you're doing. A wise son maketh a glad father, but a foolish man despises his mother. You can teach your child to hate their mother, hate their dad too. Now, no chastening for the present seems to be joyous, but grievous. And I'll tell you what, the Lord's going to give you some spanking sometimes, too. If you didn't pick your children right, He's going to spank you. Now, I'm about finished with that child training stuff, and I hope I don't have to bring that up no more. I tell you, folks, if you can't train the children, they're going to train you. If you don't take discipline and control over those children, they're going to control you. Now, shopping management. Children in control there again. I want this. Have you ever wondered why they put the stuff on cereal boxes they do? Did you ever wonder why? Did you ever wonder why in McDonald's and so forth they have certain characters? You ever wonder why? They know that the American children are not disciplined. If that child kicks and screams, I want that, I want that, I want that, they're going to get it. You can buy a box of cereal with a funny thing on it or whatever that child's screaming for and take it home and they'll not eat a bit of it. They know that, but they're selling it to you. A child will go up and down, I want this toy, and I want this, and I want this, and I want this, and I want this, and I want that. And the parents spend all their money and can't pay the rent because the child has not been trained. And the child probably not going to play with it much anyway. Is shopping with your spouse or your children a nightmare? Should they shop alone? See, here's the thing. A woman shops different than a man. They're totally different. I can go in and look at 3 suits and decide which one I want. They have to look at 25 dresses if they got them. It's just a complete difference. Now, I know some men that act like that too, but I mean, generally it's women. You know, so what we do is, shopping can be a blessing. Let's go to shopping together, and let's manage this thing. See, Naomi had to learn to make decisions. So I take her in with a whole bunch of candy bars. Y'all heard this story before, another chaining thing. I said, now, Naomi, you can get any candy bar you want. I don't care what it is, just pick one. She goes, well, I don't know what to get, Pop. Too many choices. So I said, all right, do you like this kind of candy? Yeah. Do you like this? Yes. Do you like this? Yes. Would you be satisfied with that candy? Yeah. I said, all right, now, I want to drive. We're going to take those 3. Now, which one do you want? She picked one. I said, that's the way you decide how to do things. You have to learn that. You have to manage your life. You have to manage. You can go out there and you can get yourself in a hair-raising experience. Well, I don't know if I want this. And then you go home. I don't know if I should have bought this. Maybe I should have got the other. And maybe I should have got this. And maybe I should have got the other. Well, maybe I should have got this. And maybe I should have got the other. I thought, well, you're going to be about nuts. That's the reason to have all that place in there where you can bring stuff back you don't want it. It can be a nightmare. And I told our family, we shop on a one-way street. We have no bridges behind us. You buy it, it's yours. Now let's go to the birthday and Christmas gift management. Here's a real deadly one on a lot of people. How many Christmas gifts do you get and how much do you pay for them? And you know, Christmas has become a pagan holiday instead of, it's not really a spiritual one. It's not one that says, oh, Jesus, I love you. Although we may have Jesus involved, but old Santa Claus is still on the throne. And so what we have done, we kind of quit that Christmas thing. We don't even celebrate Christmas. Now, we'll celebrate Christmas maybe in July or something like this, but we're not going to do the thing they're doing. That's heathen. The reason I'm not saying you can't have Christmas. Don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying that. But as for me and my house, We cut that stuff out. Everything, you go shopping on Christmas, and around that, it's an awful thing going to town somewhere around Christmas time. You can't get in, you can't get out. Everybody's here and everybody's there. And if you need to go get anything, you can't get it, and so forth. And it's become a commercialized thing. And how much do you really spend? Well, they're going to be disappointed if they don't spend this and if they don't spend that. And then you can get poor. And furthermore, if you don't have these lights on, if you don't have this and you don't have that. I don't have a Christmas tree in my house, don't intend to. I don't need a Christmas tree. I got some trees in the yard, and the light shines on them in the night, and the sun by day. I'm not saying a Christmas tree is out. I'm not saying it. I'm just saying I want to know what we got a Christmas tree for and what the value of it is and what it's really doing. And your Christmas lights, what do they really stand for? You ought to check it out sometime. But what I'm mainly hitting is this thing of spending money that you don't have. They call it a layup. Isn't it called a layup or something that you lay away? And the money gets away in a layaway. Most people spend money they don't have on gifts. Instead of small, useful gifts, they try to become extravagant. And they want everybody to think they're really getting a big deal. You buy your child this, and you buy them something. I'll tell you what, I remember the days when a $5 gift was a big gift. Well, that $5 now is probably worth $100. But people spend money they don't have. They buy some of the dumbest stuff. And you can tell when they buy it, there's carnality behind it. It's no spiritual thing at all. They can't understand what's wrong with this weird-looking guy on this thing and this weird-looking guy who, you know, is running something. They don't understand it. This is where we must manage properly instead of being influenced by an evil generation. This generation's evil. And folks, I'm going to tell you what. We get our children gifts. We don't buy expensive gifts for our children. We just don't do it. We don't buy expensive gifts for our grandchildren. After all, we got 5 children and 26 grandchildren and 7 great-grandchildren. 25 grandchildren and 7 great-grandchildren. And plus they're married. Then what are you going to do? You got a heap of stuff to buy. We buy gifts, but we don't go expensive. We don't buy Christmas gifts. We give gifts other times. How much do you spend on gifts? Talk it over with the family and sit down and say, now listen, you know, we can't spend as much money as some people do on these gifts. And birthday gifts or whatever. You have a birthday, then you have a Mother's Day, then you have a Father's Day, and then you got another day, and then you got some other day, and then you got another day. And you can, after a while, you can get unhappy at a happy birthday party. There's times to get extravagant. There's times to, if you can afford it, to go out there and get a gift for somebody. You know. But I'm talking about the average family that just can't afford it. That's what I'm talking about. This is probably one of the greatest managed failures among the people, is knowing when to buy a birthday gift and how much to buy. I know of a lot of preachers that got vehicles given to them. I had a vehicle given to me more than once. You know, that the church did that, but I tell you what, I'm talking about just extravagant for the sake of being extravagant. Just get out there and trying to beat everybody else over the head so you can get it. If you can't pay your rent and you're spending it on something else, you're in trouble with God and your landlord. Let me bring this series to a close on this birthday and Christmas giving thing. I want you to understand that I think gift giving is all right. It's okay to give gifts. It's fine. But I'm talking about just the simple fact that just trying to keep up with the Joneses is not the thing. There's people bought me some pretty expensive gifts, such as suits and all kind of things. And they wanted to bless me that way. But you couldn't do that all the time with everybody, or you'd really have a problem after a while. So they decide they want to bless me. Okay. And I appreciate everything they do for me. But I'm just trying to say that when you're trying to get out there and get extravagant just because somebody else has spent a lot of money and you don't have it, it can be a problem.